I'd been chasing ghosts for 3 weeks. The missing persons reports didn't match up with what the families were telling me. 7 people vanished from Boston's North End in 6 months, but no bodies, no ransom demands, no police investigation worth mentioning. Just empty apartments and relatives who wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked questions. My editor at the Globe had passed on the story. Too speculative, she said. Not enough hard evidence. So I went freelance. Pitched it to 3 online publications, who specialized in investigative pieces. 2 showed interest. One offered $1,500 if I could prove something concrete. $1,500 would cover rent and groceries for 2 months in my Cambridge studio. Worth pursuing. Thursday evening found me walking the narrow streets of the North End. Notebook tucked into my canvas jacket. Recording app ready on my phone. The October air carried the scent of fresh bread from the bakeries lining Hanover Street. Mixed with the metallic promise of incoming weather, dark clouds gathered over Boston Harbor, swallowing what remained of daylight. The neighborhood was a living museum of Italian-American heritage. Brick row houses pressed shoulder to shoulder, wrought iron balconies overlooking cobblestone alleys, barely wide enough for a single car. Old men in flat caps sat outside cafes, speaking rapid dialect that my 2 years of college Italian couldn't begin to parse. Women carried shopping bags from butcher shops and pasta stores that had occupied the same location since the 1920s. But beneath the tourist-friendly surface, something else operated. I'd noticed it in my weeks of observation. The way conversations stopped when certain people passed. The deference shown to specific businesses. The young men in dark clothing who seemed to appear and disappear without pattern or purpose that made sense to an outsider. Traditional power structures, I'd written in my notes. Alternative governance in communities law enforcement ignores or exploits. The academic language made it publishable. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. I'd come to the Church of Santa Maria della Vittoria because 3 of the missing persons had been regular attendees. 70s-era construction trying to mimic older European architecture. All stone facade and stained glass windows depicting saints I didn't recognize. Not raised Catholic. I felt like an anthropologist entering foreign territory as I climbed the front steps. The evening mass was already underway. 20 or 30 people scattered throughout the pews, mostly older women with scarves covering their hair, a handful of younger families with restless children. Incense hung thick in the air, mixing with the smell of old wood and candle wax. I slipped into a back pew, trying to look like I belonged. The priest spoke in English, but peppered his homily with Latin phrases and Italian references. I recognized some of the rhythm, the call and response pattern. My notebook stayed in my pocket. Recording this would be offensive, and I needed to blend in, observe, maybe catch conversations after the service ended. That's when the first explosion hit. Muffled, distant, like something heavy dropped in a basement. The floor trembled beneath my feet. Several people looked around, confused rather than alarmed. The priest paused mid-sentence, frowning. The second explosion was louder. Closer. Glass shattered somewhere to my left. A woman screamed. Then I smelled it, acrid and immediate. Smoke. Chaos erupted instantly. People bolted from the pews, shoving past each other toward the main doors. Parents grabbed children. Elderly women stumbled. Someone knocked over a rack of votive candles, scattering flame across the floor. The priest was shouting something in Italian, trying to restore order, but his voice drowned in the panic. I stood, instinct overriding journalism training. Get out. Survive first. Investigate later. Black smoke poured through the doorway that led to the church basement. Thick and toxic. It moved like something alive, spreading across the ceiling, fingers of darkness reaching toward us. The temperature spiked. My eyes began to water. I pushed into the aisle, fighting against the current of bodies. The main exit was clogged, people screaming, crushing each other in their desperation. I turned, looking for another way out. A side door, maybe. Emergency exit. That's when the ceiling gave way. Not all of it. Just a section above the altar where the smoke had concentrated hottest. Wooden beams of reclaimed old-growth timber used during the 1970s renovation, dried out and combustible, collapsed inward with a sound like the world cracking open. Dust and ash exploded outward. I raised my arm to shield my face, took 3 steps backward. Something massive hit me from behind. Pain exploded through both legs, sudden and total. I went down hard, face slamming into the stone floor. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Just pain, white-hot and all-consuming. When my vision cleared, I realized what had happened. A section of the fallen beam had crashed into the pew behind me, driving it forward, pinning me between splintered wood and unforgiving stone. My legs were trapped from mid-thigh down, caught in a vise of debris that weighed hundreds of pounds. I tried to pull free. Couldn't budge. Tried to push the beam. Might as well have been pushing a mountain. The smoke was getting thicker, descending from the ceiling like a blanket. Already I was coughing, lungs burning with each breath. "Help!" My voice came out raw, barely audible over the crackle of spreading fire. "Somebody help me!" But the church was empty now. Everyone had fled. Smart. Survival instinct. I would have done the same. I was going to die here, 27 years old, chasing a story about missing people, about to become one of them. The irony would have been funny if I wasn't so terrified. The heat intensified. Sweat ran down my face, mixing with tears and ash. I could see flames now, orange and hungry, climbing the walls near the altar. The smoke made everything hazy, dreamlike. My thoughts began to drift, consciousness slipping. Maybe that was better. Passing out before the real burning started. Small mercy. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy, purposeful, coming from the main entrance. Moving toward me, not away. Someone was coming back into the burning church. "Here!" I tried to shout, but it came out as a cough. "I'm here." A figure emerged through the smoke. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothing already streaked with ash. A man, moving with the kind of confidence that suggested he wasn't afraid of fire or collapsing buildings or anything else this world could throw at him. He saw me, dark eyes locked onto mine through the haze, assessing the situation in seconds. "You need to leave," I gasped. "It's not safe. Just go." He ignored me completely. Moved to the beam, pinning my legs. Gripped it with both hands. I could see him now through the smoke-stained air. Black hair, sharp features, maybe mid-30s. A thin scar traced along his right jawline, white against olive skin. He wore a suit, expensive even to my untrained eye, now ruined by soot and ash. "Please," I said again. "You can't lift that. Save yourself." He still didn't respond, just adjusted his grip, set his stance, and lifted. The beam moved. Not much, maybe 6 inches, but enough. Enough for me to drag my legs free. Pain screaming through damaged muscles and possibly cracked bones. I scrambled backward on my hands, putting distance between myself and the debris. The man let the beam crash back down. Turned to me, eyes scanning for injuries in that same swift, efficient assessment. Then he stepped forward, and before I could protest or thank him or ask his name, he picked me up. One arm under my knees, the other supporting my back, carrying me like I weighed nothing, like he did this every day. Like rescuing strangers from burning churches was just another Thursday evening. "I can walk," I lied, because my legs felt like they'd been through a wood chipper, and I wasn't sure I'd ever walk properly again. "No, you can't." His voice was low, controlled. Accent there, subtle. Not Italian exactly, but shaped by it. American-born, I guessed. Raised in a household where another language dominated. He moved toward the exit, navigating fallen debris with practiced ease. The smoke was choking now, flames spreading across the walls and ceiling. The beautiful stained glass windows were shattering from the heat, raining colored fragments onto the pews below. We hit the cool night air, like breaking through a surface after drowning. It was pouring. Heavy rain that I hadn't noticed during the Mass, now drenching us both in seconds. I gulped it down, washing smoke from my throat, feeling the blessed cold against my overheated skin. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Fire trucks, ambulances, police. A black SUV idled at the curb, engine running, driver's side door open. Another man stood beside it, older, maybe 50, with silver threading through dark hair. He looked at me with the same assessment as my rescuer, then nodded once. "In the back, Franco," my rescuer said. "Get her to the safe house. Have Marco look at her legs." "Wait," I managed. "Hospital. I need a hospital. You need safety first." He set me carefully in the back seat of the SUV, and I got my first clear look at his face. Handsome in a way that suggested danger more than comfort. Those dark eyes held intelligence and calculation in equal measure. The scar on his jaw looked old, well healed. Whatever had caused it hadn't been an accident. "Who are you?" I asked. For a moment, he said nothing. Just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then he stepped back, nodded to Franco. "Go, now." The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb, tires hissing on wet pavement. Through the rear window, I watched my rescuer disappear back into the crowd gathering around the burning church, swallowed by smoke and rain and the chaos of emergency response. I tried to stay conscious. Tried to catalog details, license plate numbers, street names. Journalist training kicking in even as my body shut down from shock and pain. But the last thing I saw before darkness took me was his face. Those eyes. That scar. The man who had walked into hell itself to pull me out. Consciousness returned in fragments. White ceiling. Antiseptic smell. Pain in my legs, dull and throbbing, but manageable. Not the screaming agony I remembered from the church. I tried to sit up. Mistake. My body protested immediately, muscles seizing. A hand appeared in my peripheral vision, pressing gently against my shoulder. "Easy, Miss Bennett. You've been through significant trauma." The voice belonged to an older man in a white coat, silver hair neatly combed, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a narrow nose. He had the calm, professional demeanor of someone who'd spent decades dealing with injuries and didn't rattle easily. "Where am I?" My throat felt raw, words coming out scratchy. "Safe." He shone a light in my eyes, checking pupil response. "You have severe contusions on both legs, minor smoke inhalation, and a mild concussion. Nothing broken, fortunately. You were lucky." "Lucky?" "Right. Because being trapped in a burning building qualified as good fortune if you survived it." The room came into focus gradually. Not a hospital. Too quiet. Too private. Medical equipment lined one wall. Professional grade. But the space itself felt more like a high-end bedroom converted for healthcare purposes. Hardwood floors, thick curtains blocking natural light, expensive furniture pushed against the walls to make room for the hospital bed I occupied. "I need to leave," I said, pushing myself up despite the doctor's warning look. "I need to contact someone. My friend will be worried." "All in good time." The doctor stepped back, making notes on a tablet. "Your vitals are stable, but I'd prefer you rest another few hours before attempting to walk." The door opened before I could argue. A man entered, the same one who'd driven the SUV. Franco, the rescuer had called him. Up close, I could see the weathering on his face, the kind that came from decades of stress rather than simple aging. Maybe 50, though he carried himself like someone who could still handle physical confrontation if necessary. "How's our guest, Marco?" he asked the doctor. "Recovering well? She's insistent on leaving." Franco's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. They usually are. He turned his attention to me, dark eyes assessing. "I'm Franco Rinaldi. You're in a safe location outside the city, about 30 miles south of the city limits, in a semi-rural stretch shielded by tall trees. Your injuries have been treated. You'll be released in 3 days, once the situation stabilizes." In her head, Emily conceded the rule had died with the pre-dawn blast. What situation? I swung my legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the protests from damaged muscles. I was in a church that caught fire. Random tragedy. There's no reason to keep me here. Wasn't random. Franco's tone remained conversational, but something in it made me stop moving. The Church of Santa Maria della Vittoria was targeted specifically. Explosives planted in the basement, timed to detonate during evening mass. You walked into the middle of a territorial dispute you don't understand. My journalist instincts kicked in immediately, overriding fear. Territorial dispute between who? Organizations you're better off not knowing about. I'm a reporter. I was investigating disappearances in the North End. I met his gaze directly. I have a right to know what's happening. Something flickered across Franco's face. Respect, maybe, or surprised that I'd admit my profession. "We know who you are." Emily Bennett, 27, freelance journalist, lives alone in Cambridge. Recently pitched a story about missing persons to 3 online publications. "You've been asking questions in the neighborhood for 3 weeks. Ice formed in my stomach. "You've been watching me. We watch everyone who shows unusual interest in our community." He said it matter-of-factly, like surveillance was a perfectly reasonable response. "Mr. Fioraldi wanted to ensure you weren't law enforcement or working for competitors. Mr. Fioraldi being the man who pulled me from the fire. The same. He'll be here shortly to explain the situation properly. In the meantime, you're welcome to move around the suite. But you cannot leave the property. Consider it protective custody." "I'm not under arrest," I said, anger rising. "You can't just hold me here." Franco moved to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "The people who bombed that church saw you inside before the evacuation. They know someone was trapped. If they find out you survived, you become leverage against Mr. Fioraldi. 3 days, Miss Bennett. That's all we're asking. Give us time to secure the situation. Then you walk away." He left before I could respond. The doctor, Marco, followed without a word, leaving me alone in the medical suite with my thoughts and a growing sense that I'd stumbled into something far more complex than I'd imagined. I stood carefully, testing my weight on both legs. Painful, but functional. The room had a bathroom attached, mirror above the sink. I looked like hell. Face smudged with ash I'd apparently sweated through, red hair a tangled mess, eyes bloodshot from smoke exposure. A change of clothes had been laid out on a chair, comfortable athletic wear in my size, which was somehow more unsettling than the surveillance revelation. How long had they been watching? What else did they know? I cleaned up as best I could with the supplies available, changed into the provided clothing, and began exploring my surroundings. The suite opened into a larger bedroom, tastefully decorated with furniture that probably cost more than my car. Windows overlooked extensive grounds, trees providing natural privacy, a tall stone wall visible in the distance. Definitely not in the city anymore. Suburbs, maybe, or rural Massachusetts entirely. My phone was gone. So was my bag, my notebook, everything I'd been carrying. Journalist instincts screamed at the loss of my notes. 3 weeks of interviews and observations vanished. The bedroom door wasn't locked. I tested it carefully, half expecting an alarm or a guard posted outside. Nothing. Just a long hallway, thick carpet muffling footsteps, more expensive art on the walls. I moved quietly, cataloging details. Large house, multiple rooms, everything maintained with the kind of care that suggested serious money and professional staff. Voices drifted from somewhere below. Male, speaking in what sounded like Italian. I couldn't make out words, but the tone suggested business discussion rather than casual conversation. "You should be resting." I spun around. Matteo Fioraldi stood at the end of the hallway, hands in his pockets, watching me with those same dark, assessing eyes. He'd changed clothes since the rescue, now wearing tailored black pants and a charcoal shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The scar on his jaw stood out more clearly in the hallway lighting. "You can't keep me here," I said, proud that my voice stayed steady. "I appreciate the rescue, but I need to leave. I have a life, responsibilities. People who will worry. Your friend Sarah." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. "The editor you work with occasionally. She's expecting you back when?" The casual knowledge of my personal life sent another chill through me. "That's none of your business. Everything that happens in my territory is my business, Miss Bennett, including journalists asking questions about things they shouldn't." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell faint traces of smoke still clinging to his clothing. "But I'm not your enemy. I saved your life because you were an innocent caught in someone else's war. Then let me go. In 3 days. Once we're certain the Albanian Mafia won't use you to get to me." Albanian Mafia. He said it so casually, confirming what Franco had implied. I'd walked into the middle of organized crime warfare, and somehow these people thought I was valuable enough to protect. Or control. "I want to call Sarah," I said. "She'll report me missing if she doesn't hear from me soon." Matteo considered this, then nodded. "Supervised call. You'll tell her you're following a lead out of town. You'll be back early next week. Nothing about the fire or this location. And if I refuse, then we'll contact her ourselves with a similar message." He pulled a phone from his pocket, my phone, and held it out. "Your choice whether she hears it from you or from us." I took the phone, hating the position he'd put me in, hating that he was right about Sarah reporting me missing. She was protective, had been ever since we met in college, bonding over late-night editing sessions and shared frustration with traditional journalism's decline. I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Em, where the hell have you been? I've been calling for hours." "I'm fine," I said quickly. "I'm sorry, my phone died and I've been chasing down a source outside the city. I should have checked in sooner." Mateo watched me, expression unreadable. "Outside the city where?" Sarah's concern was palpable even through the phone. "I can't say yet. It's sensitive. Could be big for the story. I need a few more days to verify everything." Silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Emily, you promised you'd be careful with this North End thing. Those people don't play games." "I know. I am being careful. I'll call you Monday, okay? If you don't hear from me by Monday evening, then worry. I'm worrying now." "Don't. I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm onto something real. Trust me." Another pause. "Monday evening. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling the police." "Deal. I'll talk to you soon." I ended the call, handed the phone back to Mateo. "Satisfied?" "For now." He pocketed the device. "Franco will bring you dinner in an hour. You have access to the suite and the east wing of the house. Don't try to leave the property. The security system is comprehensive, and I'd rather not have to chase you down." 3 days, I said. "Then I walk away from whatever this is." 3 days, he agreed. "After that, you're free to go back to your life and forget you ever met me." He turned to leave, and I called after him. "Why did you do it? Go back into that church?" Mateo looked back, and for just a moment, something shifted in his expression. Vulnerability, perhaps, or memory of something painful. Because no one else would. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in a hallway of a mansion owned by the MAFIA, with 3 days to understand exactly what I'd stumbled into. Saturday morning arrived with weak October sunlight filtering through the curtains. I woke to find crutches leaning against the nightstand, a silent acknowledgement that I wouldn't be staying in bed like Marco preferred. My legs protested when I swung them over the edge of the mattress, muscles stiff and bruised. But pain meant alive, meant functional. I'd take it. The crutches were professional grade, adjustable, padded. Someone had measured them to my height exactly. More evidence of the thoroughness these people operated with. I dressed in fresh clothes that had appeared overnight, another set in my exact size. Charcoal leggings, a loose cream sweater. Practical. Comfortable. I wondered if they'd raided my apartment, or simply had someone shop based on observation. The hallway outside my room was empty. No guards posted, no obvious surveillance. But I'd bet anything there were cameras, motion sensors, some kind of monitoring. You didn't build a fortress and leave the interior unprotected. I made my way slowly through the east wing, learning the layout. 6 bedrooms on this floor, each furnished but clearly unused. Guest quarters for people who apparently never visited. At the end of the hall, stairs led down to the main level. The house revealed itself gradually. Hardwood floors throughout, thick Persian rugs muffling sound. Art on the walls, real pieces, not prints. I recognized a Caravaggio copy in the foyer, or maybe an original. I couldn't tell. Dark religious imagery, dramatic lighting. Fitting. Voices drew me toward what turned out to be a formal dining room. 3 men sat around a mahogany table covered in papers and laptops, speaking in rapid Italian too quick for me to follow. They looked up when I appeared in the doorway, conversation dying immediately. "Miss Bennett." One of them stood, younger than the others, maybe 30. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for 12 hours. I shifted weight on the crutches. "I'm not good at sitting still." A slight smile crossed his face. "Franco mentioned that. I'm Luca Grimaldiro, Mr. Fioraldi's financial advisor. These are my associates. We're reviewing legitimate business operations, nothing that concerns you." The emphasis on legitimate was pointed. A reminder that I was a journalist, that they knew what I did for a living. "Where's Matteo?" I asked, testing the familiarity of his first name. "Handling security matters in the city. He'll return this evening." Luca gestured to the papers. "You're welcome to explore the property. The kitchen is fully stocked if you're hungry. Just stay within the perimeter walls." Dismissed. Politely, but clearly. I found the kitchen, massive and professional. Someone had left coffee brewing, the scent rich and dark. I poured a cup, added cream from an industrial-sized refrigerator, and continued my exploration. The library drew me like gravity. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in multiple languages. English, Italian, some Latin, history, philosophy, literature, a surprising number of legal texts. I ran my fingers along spines, reading titles. The complete works of Machiavelli, naturally, but also Dante, Calvino, contemporary American fiction. I settled into a leather chair, crutches propped beside me, and tried to piece together who Matteo Fioraldi actually was, beyond the man who walked into burning buildings. The day passed slowly. Franco checked on me twice, polite but distant. Marco examined my legs again, pronounced the healing satisfactory. I ate lunch alone in the kitchen, a sandwich I made from supplies that could have stocked a restaurant. By evening, restlessness had me pacing the library as well as I could manage on crutches. My laptop sat uselessly in my Cambridge apartment. My notes were ash. 3 weeks of investigation reduced to memories I was desperately trying to catalog mentally before they faded. "You look like you're plotting an escape." I turned. Matteo stood in the doorway, still wearing his coat. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Exhaustion carved into the lines of his face. He'd been awake as long as I'd been unconscious. Maybe longer. Just thinking. I lowered myself back into the chair. "Franco said you were handling security matters. Damage control." He moved to a cabinet, poured amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. Whiskey, from the smell. The church bombing made the news. 5 people injured in the evacuation. Thankfully, none seriously. The community is frightened. They want answers I can't give them yet. Who did it? Albanian organization trying to establish control over port operations. He took a long drink. They're pushing into territory that's been ours for 70 years. The church was a message. They're willing to hurt civilians to make their point. And you're not. His eyes found mine. Dark and unreadable. I don't involve innocence if I can avoid it. That's not always possible in this life. But it's a line I try not to cross. He moved to the window, looking out at grounds now dark beyond the glass. My grandmother attended Mass at Santa Maria della Vittoria every Sunday for 43 years. She died 6 months ago. That church was important to her, to the whole community. Bombing it during services was designed to provoke me specifically. It worked. Yes. He turned back. Which is why you're still here. They know I pulled someone from the fire. If they discover it was a journalist investigating their operations, you become leverage. Or a loose end to eliminate. My mouth went dry. I wasn't investigating them. I didn't even know they existed. But you were asking questions about disappearances that intersect with our territorial dispute. People we've been quietly relocating to keep them safe from Albanian retaliation. He studied me over the rim of his glass. Your instincts were good. You were following a real story. You just didn't understand the full picture. So explain it to me. Why? So you can write about it? So I can understand why I'm a prisoner in a mansion south of Boston instead of home in my own bed. He was quiet for a long moment, weighing something. Then he moved to the chair across from mine, settled into it with the careful movements of someone operating on no sleep and pure adrenaline. 3 years ago, my father died. Heart attack? Natural causes? But it left me in charge of the family business at 31, younger than anyone expected to take over. I'd been preparing my whole life, but preparation doesn't equal readiness. He swirled the whiskey in his glass. The organization my grandfather built, that my father expanded, it was never purely criminal. Imports, exports, real estate, restaurants, legal operations that employed hundreds of people in the North End and East Boston. But there were other things. Protection, gambling, loan operations, the kind of business that comes with the territory. Literally, a ghost of a smile. When I took over, I made a decision. Gradual legitimization. Phase out the illegal operations, reinvest in legal businesses, keep the community protection, but make it less coercive. It's been slow. These things take time, and you can't just walk away from certain obligations without consequences. But we're moving in the right direction. Until the Albanians showed up. Until they decided our port access was more valuable than peace. He drained the whiskey. Now I'm fighting a war I was trying to avoid, and people like you get caught in the crossfire. Footsteps in the hallway interrupted whatever I might have said next. Franco appeared, face grim. We have a problem. Kostage's crew grabbed Tommy Ricci in Revere an hour ago. They're demanding we withdraw from the harbor completely, or they start sending pieces of him to his mother. Matteo stood immediately, exhaustion vanishing behind cold focus. How many men do they have on him? Unknown. Bruno's tracking their movements now. Get everyone to the command room. I want options in 10 minutes. Franco nodded and disappeared. Matteo moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me. Stay here. Don't leave the library until I come back. How long will that take? However long it takes to get my soldier back alive. Then he was gone, and I was alone with books and silence and the knowledge that somewhere in Revere, someone's life hung in the balance of decisions being made in this house. I should have stayed put, should have followed orders like a good captive. Instead, I grabbed my crutches and followed. The command room was in the west wing, hidden behind what looked like a study door. I pushed it open carefully, crutches awkward against the frame. 8 men clustered around a table covered in maps and laptops. Matteo stood at the center, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. Franco noticed me first, his expression shifting from surprise to resignation. No point sending me back now. Bruno has eyes on the warehouse in Revere, someone reported. 3 hostiles outside, unknown number inside. Tommy's definitely there? Matteo asked, ending his call. Confirmed. They moved him 20 minutes ago. I stayed against the wall, trying to be invisible. This was operational planning, the kind of thing civilians weren't supposed to witness. But no one ordered me out. Maybe they were too focused, or maybe Matteo had decided I'd already seen too much for it to matter. The operation unfolded like choreography. Franco coordinating teams, routes mapped, contingencies planned. Matteo made the final calls with calm precision, never raising his voice, commanding absolute attention. 6 men, 2 vehicles. We go in fast, extract Tommy, minimize engagement. This is a rescue, not retaliation. He looked at each man. Everyone comes home tonight. They moved out within 15 minutes. I watched from the window as SUVs disappeared down the driveway, taillights swallowed by darkness. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Marco found me in the library an hour later. Brought tea I didn't ask for but accepted anyway. They'll be back soon, he said. Mr. Fioraldi doesn't take unnecessary risks. Just necessary ones? A slight smile. In his position, all risks are necessary. The vehicles returned at midnight. I heard them from upstairs, watched men file back into the house. Tommy Ricci came out of the second SUV supported by 2 others, bloodied but walking. Alive. Matteo was the last to enter. Even from the window, I could see the tension in his shoulders. The way he moved, like every muscle ached. This was what leadership looked like. Not the glamorous version from movies, but the grinding weight of other people's lives resting on your decisions. Sunday passed in strange suspension. I spent it reading, avoiding questions I wasn't ready to ask. The house felt different after witnessing the rescue operation. Less like a prison, more like a fortress protecting something fragile. Matteo kept his distance. I saw him occasionally through doorways, always in conversation, phone constantly at his ear. The man who'd talked to me in the library felt unreachable now, swallowed by responsibility. I went to bed early Sunday night, exhausted despite doing nothing physical all day. My legs ached less, healing progressing. Another day, and I could probably manage without crutches. The explosion woke me from dreamless sleep. The entire house shuddered. Glass shattered somewhere below. My body reacted before my brain caught up, rolling out of bed, hitting the floor as training from disaster reporting kicked in. Get low. Assess. Find exit. Then I heard gunfire. Not movie gunfire. Controlled and dramatic. Real gunfire. Sharp cracks overlapping, too fast to count. Shouting in Italian. Running footsteps in the hallway outside my room. My door slammed open. Matteo filled the doorframe, gun in his right hand, eyes scanning the room with lethal focus. Stay down, he ordered, moving to the window. Away from the glass. I crawled toward the bathroom, putting the bed between myself and the windows. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard it hurt. This wasn't abstract danger anymore. This was violence in real time, happening in the house where I slept. More gunfire. Closer now. Matteo spoke into a radio clipped to his belt, coordinating in clipped Italian. Franco's voice crackled back, reporting positions, casualties. A sound like breaking wood came from downstairs. Someone screamed, cut off abruptly. The lights went out, plunging everything into darkness, relieved only by security lights from the grounds outside. How many? Matteo asked into the radio. Franco's response was lost in another explosion, smaller than the first, but close. The window above the bed blew inward, showering glass across the mattress. Matteo moved without hesitation, crossing to me, positioning his body between the window and where I crouched. We're moving. Stay behind me. We went into the hallway. 2 of Matteo's men had taken position at the stairs, weapons trained downward. One had blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. They breached the south entrance. Franco appeared from a side hallway. 4 hostiles down. 2 of ours wounded. They're pulling back. As if his words summoned it, more gunfire erupted from below. One of the men at the stairs jerked backward, hit. He went down hard, clutching his shoulder, blood spreading dark across his shirt. I moved before thinking. Crawled to him, pressed my hands against the wound. He gasped, tried to push me away, but I held firm. Pressure, I said. Keep pressure on it. Someone threw me a towel. I wadded it against the entry wound, the man groaning beneath my hands. Blood was hot, sticky, too much of it. But the flow was slowing, not arterial. He'd live if we could stop the bleeding. Matteo glanced back, saw what I was doing. Something shifted in his expression. Too quick to read in the darkness and chaos. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started. Silence rushed in, somehow louder than the noise had been. My ears rang. The man under my hands was breathing hard but steady. Clear, Franco reported. They're gone. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in harsh white. I could see the damage now. Bullet holes in the walls, broken glass everywhere. A section of banister destroyed. The wounded man I'd been helping was younger than I'd thought, maybe 25. His face was pale, but determined. Thank you, he managed in accented English. 2 more of Matteo's men had been hit. One with a leg wound, another with what looked like shrapnel in his side from the explosion. Marco was already moving between them, triaging with professional efficiency. But there was a 3rd man, still and silent near the stairs. Franco knelt beside him, checked for a pulse, then slowly shook his head. The weight of it hit me like physical force. Someone had died. A real person, with family and history and plans for tomorrow that would never happen. Because of a war over territory and money and power structures I barely understood. Matteo stood over the body for a long moment, then turned to Franco. Get his family here. I'll tell them personally. The next hours blurred together. Police were notably absent despite the gunfire and explosions. Apparently, these neighborhoods operated under different rules, different authorities. The kind of arrangement you didn't talk about openly, but everyone understood. The property sat on private land with a long, gated access road, and Matteo's people had already jammed cell signals and fed a false alarm to the local dispatcher, delaying patrols by design. I watched from the library as dawn broke, painting the damaged house in gold light that seemed obscene against the night's violence. Matteo had been gone for 2 hours, visiting the dead man's widow. When he returned, he looked like he'd aged years. He found me on the back veranda, the only part of the house that felt clean of violence. Neither of us spoke at first. What was there to say? His name was Vincent Moretti, Matteo finally said. 26 years old. Married 8 months. His wife is 3 months pregnant. I closed my eyes against the image. I'm sorry. He knew the risks. But Matteo's voice held no conviction. Just exhaustion. That doesn't make it any easier. We sat in silence as the sun climbed higher. It felt wrong, the world continuing like nothing had happened. Franco appeared in the doorway, face grim. We need to talk. Both of you. We followed him to the study. He pulled up photos on a laptop, surveillance images grainy and dark. Our informant sent these, taken by Albanian spotters during the attack. Franco clicked through several images, then stopped on one that made my stomach drop. It was me, kneeling over the wounded guard, clearly visible through a window. The angle showed my face, my red hair, enough detail to identify me without question. They know who you are now, Franco said. They recognized you from the church. They know Matteo protected you, brought you here. Matteo leaned forward, studying the image with cold focus. When was this taken? 20 minutes into the attack, before they withdrew. Have they identified her specifically? Working on it, but they have enough to track her down if she goes back to Cambridge. The implications settled over me like ice water. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was leverage, a target, the kind of loose end that got eliminated in wars like this. I need to leave, I said. Get out of Boston entirely. Go stay with family in California until this blows over. They'll find you, Matteo said flatly. If they want you badly enough, geography doesn't matter. And running makes you look guilty. Like you have information worth protecting. So what am I supposed to do? He met my eyes. Stay here, under protection, until we end this or they lose interest. How long could that take? I don't know. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Sarah. I'd promised to call her Monday, but it was barely dawn. Why would she be up this early? I answered, hyper-aware of Matteo and Franco listening. Sarah? Thank God. Emily, are you watching the news? There was an attack in Revere last night, connected to that church bombing. They're saying it's organized crime, Albanian mob against the local Italian families. This is what you were investigating, isn't it? I closed my eyes. Of course she'd made the connection. Sarah was too smart not to. I'm safe, I said carefully. I'm nowhere near Revere. But you're still pursuing this story. Emily, this is dangerous. These people don't care about press credentials or First Amendment rights. They'll hurt you. I know. I'm being careful. Where are you right now? I can come get you. We'll leave Boston together until things calm down. I looked at Matteo, who shook his head slightly. If Sarah came here, she'd become part of this too. Another target. Another person in danger because of me. I can't tell you where I am, but I'm safe. I promise. Just give me a few more days. Emily. Sarah, trust me, please. I'll call you soon. I ended the call before she could argue further, guilt sitting heavy in my chest. I was lying to my best friend, the one person who'd always been there. But what choice did I have? You did the right thing, Franco said quietly. Keeping her out of this protects her. I wasn't sure I believed him, but I also wasn't sure I had any other options left. The week that followed Vincent Moretti's funeral stretched longer than the 7 days on the calendar suggested. I'd told myself I was staying because leaving would be more dangerous, because the Albanians had my face, and Franco was right about geography not mattering to people who wanted you dead. But that wasn't entirely true anymore. Tuesday morning found me in the library again, laptop open on the mahogany desk. Franco had provided it reluctantly, after I'd argued that sitting idle was driving me insane. Limited internet access, heavily monitored, but functional for basic research. I started with the disappearances that had brought me to the North End in the first place. 7 people in 6 months, all connected to the Italian community. No bodies, no ransom demands, just empty apartments and families who wouldn't talk. I cross-referenced names with property records, social media activity, utility bills. Patterns emerged slowly, like developing photographs in a darkroom. Maria Giordano, reported missing in April, had electricity bills showing up at an address in Hartford, Connecticut. Anthony Cusumano, gone in June, had a new driver's license issued in Providence, Rhode Island. They weren't dead. They were relocated. By Wednesday afternoon, I'd mapped 5 of the 7 to new locations, all within 3 hours of Boston, all in areas where Italian communities existed, where they could blend in, start over. Witness protection, but not the federal kind. This was family taking care of its own. I found Matteo in what Franco called the war room, staring at maps of Boston Harbor with the intensity of a general planning invasion. He looked up when I entered, exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. "The missing people," I said without preamble. "They're not missing. You moved them." He studied me for a long moment, then gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me what you found." I laid out my research, the addresses, the pattern of relocation. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding as I confirmed what he already knew. "They were witnesses," he said when I finished, "to Albanian operations, to violence, to things that would have gotten them killed if they testified. So we moved them quietly. New identities, financial support, protection. Better than what the federal government would have provided, and faster. Why not go through proper channels? Because proper channels mean trials, publicity, years of waiting while the people you're testifying against know exactly where to find you." He leaned back, scrubbing a hand across his face. "The Albanians started pushing into port territory 2 years ago. Not aggressively at first, just testing boundaries. But when they met resistance, they escalated. Started targeting civilians who might cooperate with authorities. So you got them out first. We protected our community. That's what families do, Miss Bennett. Legal or not, that's the responsibility we accepted generations ago." Thursday brought a different kind of education. Matteo had business in the North End, and Franco suggested I accompany them. "Fresh air," he said. "Change of scenery." The truth was simpler. They wanted me to see what they actually did beyond the violence and territory wars. We drove into the neighborhood in an unmarked sedan. No entourage, no obvious security. Just Matteo, Franco, and me watching Boston's Italian heart go about its daily business. Our first stop was a bakery on Hanover Street, the kind that had occupied the same storefront since the 1940s. The owner, an old man with flour-dusted hands, greeted Matteo with genuine warmth. They spoke in Italian too rapid for me to follow, but I caught the gist. A dispute with the landlord. Rent increases the bakery couldn't sustain. Matteo made 2 phone calls. Within 20 minutes, the issue was resolved. The landlord, who apparently owed the Fioraldi family some unspecified favor, agreed to keep rent at current rates for 5 years. "That's not exactly legal mediation," I said as we left. "No," Matteo agreed. "But it kept a 70-year-old man from losing his livelihood, and it kept an institution in the community. Sometimes the law isn't equipped to handle what's actually just." The afternoon continued in similar fashion. A dispute between 2 restaurant owners over supplier contracts, settled with phone calls and quiet conversation. A widow whose pension had been delayed by bureaucratic nonsense, resolved through connections Matteo had in city offices. A teenager caught shoplifting, handled privately rather than through police who would have given him a record. I watched it all with growing complexity of feeling. This wasn't the romanticized mafia from movies, all violence and intimidation. This was something closer to feudal lordship, protection and control bound together so tightly you couldn't separate them. "You're judging," Matteo observed as we drove back. "I'm trying to understand." "Understanding and approval aren't the same thing." "No," I agreed. "They're not." Friday evening found us in the library again, the space that had become neutral ground between us. He poured whiskey, offered me a glass I accepted this time. The alcohol burned pleasantly, warming me from the inside. "Tell me about the port," I said. "Why it matters so much." He settled into the chair across from mine, drink cradled in both hands. "My grandfather came to Boston in 1952 with nothing. He worked the docks, saved every dollar, eventually bought a small import business. Wine, olive oil, cheese, real products, legal trade. My father expanded it, added restaurants, real estate. We employ 300 people directly, another 200 indirectly through contracts and supply chains. And the illegal operations? Protection, mostly. Gambling operations we inherited and haven't fully phased out. Some loan services the banks won't touch. He met my eyes. I'm not pretending we're saints, Emily, but 70% of our revenue is legitimate business. I've spent 3 years moving that number toward 80, toward 90. It's slow, but it's progress. Until the Albanians showed up. Until they decided our port access was more valuable than peace. They want the shipping routes, the warehouse space, the connections we've built over 70 years. His jaw tightened. They think they can take it through violence and intimidation. They're wrong. My phone buzzed. Sarah, for the 3rd time this week. I'd been maintaining the lie about chasing a story, keeping details vague, promising to check in regularly. The guilt was becoming its own weight. I stepped into the hallway to answer. Hey, you sound tired. Long week. How are things there? Fine. Boring without you around. She paused. Are you sure you're okay? You sound different. Different how? I don't know. Stressed, maybe, or scared. If you're in over your head with this story, you can walk away. No article is worth getting hurt. I thought about Vincent Moretti's widow, about the bullet holes in the mansion walls, about the way Matteo looked at me sometimes like I was a problem he couldn't solve. I'm not in danger, I said, the lie tasting worse each time I repeated it. I promise I'll be home soon. We talked for a few more minutes before she had to go. When I returned to the library, Matteo was standing at the window, looking out at grounds lit by security lights. You're good at lying to her, he observed. Practice. I rejoined him at the window. This is becoming easier, being here. That worries me. Why? Because I'm a journalist. I'm supposed to maintain objectivity, distance. But I'm watching you operate, seeing the complexity, and I can't fit it into the neat categories I'm supposed to use. You're not a villain, but you're not a hero either. You're just a person making impossible choices in an impossible situation. He turned to face me. We were close enough that I could see the different shades in his dark eyes, the way the scar on his jaw caught the light. What will you write? He asked. When this is over and you're back to your life, what story will you tell? I don't know yet, but you will write something. It's what I do. Even if it puts people at risk? The question hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. He wasn't wrong to ask. Publishing anything about the Fioraldi family, even in academic terms, even without names, would have consequences I couldn't fully predict. I won't use names, I said finally. I won't include identifying details. But yes, I'll write something. About community power structures, about the vacuum law enforcement leaves in marginalized neighborhoods, about what happens when traditional authority fails people. That's very diplomatic language for describing organized crime. It's honest language for describing what I've seen here. Saturday afternoon brought Franco to the library, where I'd been reading since morning. He settled into a chair with the ease of someone comfortable in his own authority. You're changing him, he said without preamble. I looked up from my book. Excuse me? Matteo. He's different when you're around. Softer, maybe. More willing to question things he's always accepted. Franco studied me with those assessing eyes. I've known him since he was 16. Watched his father groom him to take over. Watched him struggle with the weight of leadership when it came too soon. He's never let anyone see the parts of himself he's shown you. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand what you're dealing with. He can't leave this life, Emily. Too many people depend on him. The community, the families of his soldiers, the businesses that survive because of protection we provide. If he walks away, the structure collapses. Other families move in, probably more violent ones. Or the Albanians take everything. I know that. Do you? Because I see the way you look at each other. I see what's building between you. And when you leave, it's going to hurt both of you. He stood, moved to the door. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to prepare you for reality. He left before I could respond. His words settled over me like weight, truth I'd been avoiding. Whatever this was between Matteo and me, it had an expiration date, approaching fast. Sunday dinner was quiet, just Matteo, Franco, and me at the dining table. The mansion felt emptier with most of the security team on rotation elsewhere. We ate pasta Franco's sister had prepared, drank wine from bottles imported through Matteo's legitimate business. The Albanian operation is fragmenting, Matteo said, breaking the comfortable silence. Our sources say their leadership is fighting internally over strategy. The church bombing wasn't authorized by their top tier. It was a lower-level commander trying to make a name for himself. Does that change anything? I asked. It might. If their organization splinters, we can negotiate with the more reasonable factions, isolate the violent ones. He paused. It also means the threat against you specifically might decrease. You were caught in a rogue operation, not a coordinated strategy. Hope flared, unexpected and bright. So I could leave? Not yet. But soon. Possibly. The prospect should have thrilled me. Freedom, return to normal life, escape from the complex moral territory I'd been navigating for a week. Instead, I felt something uncomfortably close to disappointment. That night found me on the veranda again, wrapped in a borrowed coat against the October chill. Matteo appeared beside me without announcement, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Thank you, I said, accepting one. For everything. For saving me, protecting me, showing me things I never would have understood otherwise. You're welcome, though I'm not sure what you're thanking me for. I put you in danger by pulling you from that church. The Albanians wouldn't have known you existed otherwise. You also saved my life. I'd be dead if you hadn't gone back in. We stood in silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Boston's light pollution was visible on the horizon, but out here we could see the constellations clearly. I've been thinking about what you said, Matteo began, about writing your story. You should do it. Tell the truth as you see it. The complexity, the contradictions, all of it. It won't be flattering. Truth rarely is. He turned to face me. But it'll be honest, and that matters more. The moment stretched between us, charged with everything unsaid. His hand reached up, fingers brushing hair back from my face with unexpected gentleness. My breath caught. Then the veranda door opened. Franco stood there, phone in hand, expression urgent. We have a problem. The Albanian commander who ordered the church bombing, someone just took him out. Execution style. And they're pointing fingers at us. Matteo's posture shifted instantly from the man beside me to the leader his family needed. Gather everyone. Command room, 5 minutes. He looked back at me once, regret and something else crossing his features. Then he was gone, and I was alone on the veranda with stars overhead and the taste of almost on my lips. The assassination of the Albanian commander changed everything overnight. Monday morning brought a tense energy to the mansion. Men moving with purpose through hallways, conversations conducted in urgent whispers. I stayed out of the way, watching from the library as Matteo's organization shifted into high alert. Franco found me before noon, his expression grim. We need to talk. Both of you. Matteo was already in the command room when we arrived, studying satellite images of the North End on multiple screens. He looked like he hadn't slept, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. The Albanians are planning retaliation, Franco said without preamble. Our source inside their operation sent this an hour ago. He pulled up architectural plans on one of the screens. They're targeting the church again. Santa Maria della Vittoria. Explosives, enough to level the entire block. My stomach dropped. It's still under reconstruction. There are workers there every day. They don't care about workers, Matteo said flatly. They care about sending a message. The church is symbolic, represents everything they want to destroy about our presence in the North End. When? I asked. Tomorrow night. They're moving the explosives into position this afternoon. Franco zoomed in on the plans. We can intercept, but they'll have significant numbers. 10, maybe 15 men guarding the operation. Matteo studied the images in silence, calculating odds, weighing options. I could see the weight of command pressing down on him, every choice carrying consequences measured in lives. We don't have enough men to take them head on, Franco continued. Not without casualties we can't afford. An idea formed, reckless and possibly brilliant. What if you didn't have to go head on? I said. What if they thought you were somewhere else entirely? Both men looked at me. I moved to the computer, pulling up my research from the past week. During my investigation, I identified a Boston PD detective who's been feeding information to the Albanians. Detective Carl Morgan, works Organized Crime Division. I have his contact information from when I was trying to get quotes for my article. I looked at Matteo. If I reached out to him, said I had information about Fioraldi family operations at the port tomorrow night, he'd pass it to his Albanian contacts. You want to plant false intelligence? Matteo said slowly. Create a diversion. They split their forces, send people to the port expecting an ambush there. Meanwhile, you hit their actual operation at the church with your full team. Franco was already shaking his head. Too risky. If they suspect it's a setup, they adjust and we lose the element of surprise. And it puts Emily directly in their crosshairs if Morgan figures out she's working with us. She's already in their crosshairs, Matteo said quietly. The photos from the attack proved that. He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him fighting two impulses. The strategic value of my plan versus the desire to keep me out of danger entirely. I can do this, I said. Morgan thinks I'm just a journalist chasing a story. He doesn't know I'm here. Doesn't know I have any connection to your family beyond being a witness to the church bombing. I tell him I've been investigating Fioraldi operations, discovered something big happening at the port, offer it as an exclusive tip. He takes it to the Albanians. They can't resist the intelligence. And if it goes wrong? Matteo asked. Then we adjust. But doing nothing guarantees they bomb that church and kill whoever's in the area. The silence stretched. Franco waited for Matteo's decision, clearly against the plan but deferring to his judgment. You stay here, Matteo finally said. In the command van with Franco. You make the call, plant the information, then you don't leave this property. Understood? Understood. And Emily? His eyes held mine. If this works, I owe you more than I can repay. If it doesn't, I'll never forgive myself for agreeing to it. We spent the next 2 hours planning every detail. What I'd say to Morgan, how to make the intelligence sound credible without being too specific. Timing the call so the Albanians had enough notice to redirect resources, but not enough to verify independently. At 3 p.m., I made the call from a burner phone Franco provided. Morgan answered on the 4th ring, suspicious immediately. Detective Morgan, this is Emily Bennett. I'm a freelance journalist. I reached out to you a few weeks ago about North End disappearances. I remember. What do you want, Miss Bennett? I've been following a lead, and I've uncovered something significant. Fioraldi family operation, happening tomorrow night at their warehouse facility near the port. Large shipment coming in, something they're being very careful about. I thought you'd want to know. Silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, weighing whether this was legitimate. What kind of shipment? I don't have specifics, but the security arrangements are extensive. Whatever it is, it's important to them. I'm willing to share my source information if you can guarantee protection and attribution for my story. Send me what you have. I'll look into it. I need your word this leads to arrests. If I'm burning sources, it has to be worth it. You have my word. I ended the call, hands shaking slightly. Franco nodded approval. Well done. Natural hesitation, credible motivation. He'll take it to his contacts. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. The command van was equipped with communications gear that looked military-grade, screens showing feeds from cameras positioned around the church reconstruction site. We parked 3 blocks away, Franco at the controls, me beside him watching everything unfold in real time. Matteo's team moved into position at 7 p.m. 12 men, approaching from multiple angles, communications coordinated through the radio system Franco monitored. On a second screen, we tracked Albanian movement at the port, confirming they'd taken the bait. 7 hostiles there, leaving only 4 guarding the church operation. All teams, you have green light, Franco said into his headset. Target is the basement access, southwest corner. Rules of engagement: neutralize threats, secure explosives, minimize collateral. Go. I watched shadows move across the screens, figures approaching the church with practiced precision. Then the first shots, muzzle flashes bright in the darkness. The sound came through the radio, sharp and immediate. Contact, 3 hostiles, engaging. Second team moving to flank. Basement secured, 2 down. The operation lasted 8 minutes. 4 Albanian operatives neutralized, explosive materials secured, no civilian casualties. Professional, efficient, exactly what Matteo had trained his people for. But then Franco's voice tightened. Matteo's hit, right shoulder through and through. He's mobile but bleeding. Everything else faded. I heard myself asking if he was okay, heard Franco's response that it was superficial, heard the tactical debriefing continuing. But all I could focus on was the image of Matteo wounded, bleeding, because I'd suggested this plan. When the vehicles returned to the mansion, I was standing in the driveway before they'd fully stopped. Matteo climbed out of the second SUV, left arm hanging awkwardly, blood soaking through a makeshift bandage on his right shoulder. Marco was already moving toward him with a medical kit. But Matteo's eyes found mine first. "It worked," he said. "Everyone's safe." I crossed the distance between us without thinking, without planning, driven by relief and fear, and something fiercer I wasn't ready to name. My hands touched his face, checking for other injuries, needing the confirmation that he was alive and whole despite the blood. "You're hurt. I've had worse. That's not comforting." He caught my wrist gently with his good hand, stopping my frantic assessment. We were close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth of his breath against my face. "Emily," he said, my name carrying weight I'd never heard before. Then he kissed me, not gentle, not tentative, urgent and fierce, tasting of adrenaline and relief and all the tension that had been building between us for days. I kissed him back, fingers tangling in his hair, pressing closer despite his injury. When we broke apart, Franco was politely studying something in the opposite direction, and Marco was waiting with obvious impatience to treat the gunshot wound. "We should talk about this," I managed. "Later," Matteo agreed. After Marco stops glaring at me. The medical treatment took an hour. Clean through shot, no bone damage, painful but not serious. I waited in the hallway outside, trying to process what had just happened, what it meant, what came next. Franco found me there carrying his laptop. His expression was carefully neutral. "We have a problem." He showed me the surveillance footage, images captured by Albanian spotters during the mansion attack a week ago. Me, kneeling over the wounded guard, clearly visible through the window. My face, my red hair, enough detail to identify me without question. "They've been circulating this in their network," Franco said, "trying to determine who you are and why Matteo protected you. Our intelligence suggests they've connected you to the church bombing, figured out you're the journalist who was asking questions in the North End." Ice formed in my stomach. "So they know where to find me. They know your name, your apartment address, probably your routine before Matteo brought you here. Going back to Cambridge now would be suicide. They'd grab you within hours, use you as leverage against us." Matteo appeared in the doorway, shoulder freshly bandaged, moving carefully. He'd heard the last part. "You can't go home," he said. "Not until we resolve this completely. They've made you a target, Emily. I'm sorry. How long?" "I don't know. Days, weeks, possibly longer." He moved closer, voice dropping. "But I promise you, we will end this. And when we do, you'll be free to go back to your life." I looked between them, at Franco's grim certainty and Matteo's fierce protectiveness. The mansion that had been temporary shelter was now an indefinite prison. The investigation that brought me here had become something far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. And the man I'd just kissed, the one who'd risked everything to keep a church from exploding, was the only thing standing between me and people who wanted to use me to destroy him. "Then we end it," I said. "Tell me what needs to happen." Matteo's hand found mine, squeezed once. We end it together. The days after the church operation felt like trying to breathe underwater. Everything moved around me. Conversations happening in rooms I wasn't invited to. Plans being made without my input. Matteo became a ghost in his own house, appearing only for brief moments before disappearing into meetings with men whose names I didn't know. We'd kissed. We'd stood in that driveway with his blood on my hands and crossed a line neither of us could uncross. And now he was avoiding me, like I carried some contagious disease. Franco found me in the library Wednesday afternoon, where I'd been pretending to read the same page for an hour. He settled into the chair across from mine with the weariness of someone who'd been awake too long. "He's not avoiding you because he wants to," Franco said without preamble. "He's negotiating with 3 other Italian families in Providence, Hartford, and New York, trying to build a coalition strong enough to force the Albanians into a permanent ceasefire. It requires all his attention. I didn't ask. You didn't have to. It's written all over your face." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Matteo lost his parents when he was 20 years old. Car bomb, meant for his father, but they were both inside. He inherited this life before he was ready, before he'd finished becoming whoever he might have been without it. I closed the book I hadn't been reading. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. He can't walk away from this, Emily. Even if he wanted to, even if you asked him to. Too many people depend on him. The families of his soldiers, the businesses that survive because of our protection, the community that's been under our care for 70 years. If he abandons it all, what happens to them? I know that. Do you? Because I see the way you look at him. I see what's growing between you, and I need you to understand that when you leave here, it ends. There's no middle ground, no compromise that lets you both have what you want." His words landed like physical blows, each one true and unbearable. "You think I don't know my world and his can't coexist? I think you're hoping for a miracle that doesn't exist." Thursday morning brought a visitor I didn't expect. Franco intercepted a phone call to the house, then brought his phone to me in the library. "FBI," he said quietly. "Agent Christina Wells, Organized Crime Division. She wants to talk to you about the Fioraldi family. I could block it, but she'll just try again. Better to handle it now." I took the phone, pulse quickening. "This is Emily Bennett. Miss Bennett, I'm Special Agent Wells. I understand you've been staying at the Fioraldi estate for the past 2 weeks. I'd like to speak with you about what you've witnessed there. I'm a journalist. I was caught in the church bombing, and Mr. Fioraldi provided protection while the Albanian situation was volatile. I don't have information relevant to any investigation. You've been living in the home of a known organized crime figure. You've surely observed operations, overheard conversations, seen things that could help us build a case against criminal activity. With respect, Agent Wells, I haven't witnessed any criminal activity. Mr. Fioraldi runs legitimate import businesses and provides community support in the North End. If you're investigating him, you're wasting resources that could be used against the people who actually bombed that church." Silence on the other end, then a carefully controlled response. "We have ways of protecting witnesses who cooperate, Miss Bennett. Ways of ensuring your safety that don't involve living under the control of a mafia boss. I'm not under anyone's control. I'm grateful for the protection I received, and I have no interest in cooperating with an investigation based on assumptions rather than evidence. Are we done here? For now. But if you change your mind, call this number." She rattled off digits I didn't bother to memorize. "Be careful who you trust, Miss Bennett." The call ended. I handed the phone back to Franco, who looked impressed despite himself. "That was well handled. You could have destroyed us with one conversation." "I'm not interested in destroying anyone. I'm interested in understanding the truth, and the truth is more complicated than good guys and bad guys." That evening, Matteo finally emerged from his office. I found him on the veranda, the same place we'd stood when Franco interrupted us with news of the Albanian commander's death. It felt like years ago, instead of days. "The negotiations are done," he said without turning. "We have an agreement. The Albanians keep their existing territory in Charlestown. We maintain control of the North End and port operations. Neutral zones established, penalties for violations. It's not perfect, but it's peace. That's good. It means you can leave. Go back to your apartment, your life. The threat against you is officially rescinded as part of the agreement. You're no longer leverage. The relief I should have felt didn't come. Just a hollow ache where hope had been building without permission." "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning. Franco will drive you home, ensure your apartment is secure. We'll maintain distant surveillance for a few weeks, just to be certain, but you'll be safe." I moved to stand beside him at the railing. The October night was cold. stars sharp overhead. We should talk about what happened after the church operation. We kissed. His voice was flat, carefully controlled. In the heat of the moment, adrenaline and relief. It doesn't change anything, doesn't it? He turned to face me then, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it took my breath away. Emily, I can't give you what you deserve. I can't walk you down Hanover Street without worrying about who's watching. Can't take you to dinner without calculating security risks. Can't introduce you to my life without pulling you deeper into danger. You deserve someone whose past doesn't include bodies buried in consequences. Someone who can give you a normal future. And what if I don't want normal? You say that now. But 6 months from now, when you're living under constant surveillance, when you can't publish certain stories because it puts me at risk, when you have to lie to everyone you know about who I really am, you'll regret it. And I won't do that to you. So you're deciding for both of us. I'm protecting you from a choice you'll come to hate. I wanted to argue, to fight against his certainty. But I could see the conviction in his face, the way he'd already made the decision, and locked it behind walls I couldn't breach. What if I wrote about this? I asked. About community power structures. About what I've seen here. Would you try to stop me? No. Write your truth, Emily. Tell the story as you understand it. Just protect the people in it. The ones who trusted you by letting you see behind the curtain. I will. We stood in silence, the space between us charged with everything unsaid. Finally, he stepped back, creating distance that felt permanent. Franco will have you ready to leave at 8 a.m. If you need anything before then, he'll arrange it. He walked away without looking back, and I stood alone on the veranda wondering how something that had felt so right could end so absolutely. Friday morning came too fast. I packed the few belongings I'd accumulated, changed into my own clothes that someone had retrieved from my apartment. The woman who looked back at me from the mirror was different from the one who'd entered a burning church 2 weeks ago. Harder, maybe. More aware of the shadows that existed beneath the surface of every city. Franco drove me home in silence, respecting the fact that I had nothing left to say. Cambridge looked exactly the same as when I'd left, which felt wrong somehow. The world should have changed to reflect everything that had happened. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Dishes still in the sink from that Thursday morning that felt like a lifetime ago. Franco checked every room, every window, confirmed the security measures his people had installed. You have my number, he said at the door. If anything feels wrong, if anyone approaches you about what you saw, call immediately. Thank you, Franco, for everything. He nodded once, then left, and I was alone for the first time in 2 weeks. Sarah arrived 30 minutes later, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug that broke something loose inside me. Tell me everything, she demanded. I told her what I could. The investigation, the church bombing, being caught in the wrong place. I described staying with people who protected me, learning things that changed how I saw the North End. I left out names, faces, the way Matteo's eyes looked in firelight. And now you're safe? She asked. Now I'm safe. Over the next 2 weeks, I wrote. Not the story I'd originally planned, but something deeper. An examination of how communities create their own governance structures when traditional authority fails them. How protection and control become indistinguishable. How people survive in the margins using whatever tools they have available. I sent it to an academic journal specializing in urban sociology. They published it within a week, and it generated exactly the kind of thoughtful discussion I'd hoped for. Professors cited it. Students used it in papers. Fellow journalists reached out with questions. But every night, I lay in my bed and felt the absence of something I'd never really had. I told myself the emptiness would fade, that returning to normal life would fill the spaces Matteo had occupied. I'd been wrong. 2 months felt longer than the 2 weeks I'd spent in Matteo's mansion. January arrived with the kind of cold that made Boston feel like a different city entirely. Snow transforming the brick and concrete into something softer, almost forgiving. I'd settled back into my life with surprising ease on the surface. Freelance assignments, coffee dates with Sarah, the rhythms of Cambridge existence that required no explanation or justification. But underneath, something fundamental had shifted. I saw power structures everywhere now. the invisible networks that govern neighborhoods, the way protection and control intertwined in ways most people never noticed. The envelope arrived on a Thursday with no return address, just my name written in careful script. Inside were photographs printed on glossy paper. Albanian crime boss Arben Kastrati in FBI custody. Federal agents escorting him from a warehouse in Chelsea. The headline from the Boston Globe clipped and included, "Major human trafficking ring dismantled. Albanian leader faces life sentence." No note. No message. But I knew who'd sent it. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, studying the images. Matteo had been working toward this even while I'd been at the mansion, building a case against the Albanians that would end the territorial war permanently. Not through violence, but through the justice system he claimed didn't work for people like him. The irony wasn't lost on me. Saturday morning found me restless, unable to focus on the article I was supposed to be drafting. I pulled on my winter coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and headed out into the cold, without a destination in mind. My feet carried me to the North End. I told myself it was research, checking on the church reconstruction for a follow-up piece I'd been considering. The truth was simpler and more complicated. Santa Maria della Vittoria was taking shape again. The blackened stone had been cleaned, new stained glass installed in some windows, scaffolding covering the areas still under repair, maybe 60% complete. Workers moved around the site even on Saturday, the community determined to reclaim what had been taken from them. I found a cafe across the street, one of the small places that had survived gentrification through sheer stubbornness. Ordered an espresso I didn't really want, and settled at a window seat, watching the reconstruction. They're saying it'll be finished by Easter. My heart stopped, then kicked into overdrive. I didn't need to turn around to know that voice. But I did anyway. Matteo Fioraldi stood beside my table, hands in the pockets of a charcoal wool coat, scarf loose around his neck. He looked thinner than I remembered, shadows under his eyes suggesting too many long nights. But the scar on his jaw was the same, and those dark eyes held the same intensity that had made me forget every rational objection I'd ever had. "May I sit?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He settled across from me, ordered coffee from the server who appeared with obvious deference, then turned his attention back to me. "You got the photos. No message, but yes, I got them. I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me, but I thought you should know it's over. The territorial war, the threat against you. Kastrati's facing 40 years minimum, his organization fractured. The other Albanian families negotiated separate peace terms. It's done. That's good." I wrapped my hands around my espresso cup. The community must be relieved. They are, though some are already complaining about the construction noise. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, the easy connection we'd found in the mansion feeling distant and impossible to reclaim. "Why are you here, Matteo?" He took a breath, choosing words carefully. "Because I've spent 2 months trying to convince myself that walking away was the right thing. That protecting you meant staying out of your life. And I can't make myself believe it anymore. Nothing's changed. You're still who you are. I'm still who I am. Actually, things have changed." He pulled out his phone, opened a document, slid it across the table. Legal paperwork, dense with language I only partially understood. "This is a restructuring agreement I signed 3 weeks ago. I've delegated all operational decisions to Franco and a council of advisors. My role is now strictly oversight of legitimate business operations, wine imports, restaurants, real estate holdings." I scanned the document, seeing his signature, witness signatures, dates, official and binding. That's not the same as leaving. No, it's not. I can't abandon the community or the people who depend on me, but I'm actively divesting from anything illegal. It's a 2-year process, maybe longer. Contracts to honor, obligations to fulfill properly, but it's happening. I met with attorneys yesterday to discuss how to make the transition permanent. He took the phone back, pulled up more documents. Financial statements showing reduced income from protection operations, increased investment in legitimate enterprises, correspondence with other Italian families about territorial boundaries and mutual support agreements that didn't require violence. "Why now?" I asked. Because you made me question things I'd always accepted as inevitable. Because I watched you risk everything to stop a church from exploding, and I realized I'd been using my responsibilities as an excuse not to change. He leaned forward. I'm not promising I'll be perfect. I'm not claiming I can walk away from this completely, but I'm trying to become someone who doesn't have to apologize for how he makes a living. The server brought his coffee. He added sugar slowly, giving me time to process. What are you asking me, Matteo? Dinner. Just dinner. Let me show you who I'm becoming, not who I was. If you decide it's not what you want, I'll respect that. But I had to try, Emily. I had to know if what we had was real or just adrenaline and impossible circumstances. I thought about the past 2 months. The way I'd reread my own article dozens of times, looking for him between the lines. The way Cambridge felt emptier than it should. Even with Sarah and my work and my freedom. The way I'd driven past the North End twice without admitting why. I don't know if this can work, I said honestly. Our worlds don't overlap easily. I know. I'm not going to stop writing. If I see something that needs to be exposed, I won't protect you. I wouldn't ask you to. And I won't lie to people I care about. Sarah already suspects something happened that I'm not telling her. Then tell her. The truth. Whatever version you're comfortable with. I'm done with secrets that matter. I studied his face, looking for the calculation I'd seen during those weeks at the mansion. Found only exhaustion and hope, and the same vulnerability he'd shown me in the library that first night. 1 dinner, I said. No promises beyond that. Relief washed over his features. 1 dinner, that's all I'm asking. We finished our coffee talking about surface things. The reconstruction timeline, changes in the neighborhood, a new restaurant Franco's sister was opening. Easy conversation that reminded me why I'd been drawn to him in the first place, beyond the danger and the protection and the impossible situation. When we left the cafe, snow had started falling again, light flakes drifting through the narrow streets of the North End. Matteo walked beside me, careful to maintain a respectful distance, as we wandered down Hanover Street. What's your opinion on the great cannoli debate? He asked suddenly. I laughed, surprised. The what? Mike's pastry versus modern pastry. It's a serious question. Wars have been fought over less. I'm a journalist. I remain impartial on controversial topics. Coward. Diplomatic. We argued about pastries and the best pizza in Boston, and whether the Red Sox had any chance next season. Trivial conversations that felt profound because they were normal, because they weren't about violence or territory or impossible choices. At the corner where Hanover met Prince Street, we stopped. My apartment was in one direction, his life in another. Thank you for today, I said. Thank you for giving me a chance. He reached into his coat, pulled out another card. My personal number. Not business, not monitored. Call me when you're ready for that dinner. I took the card, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The same electricity I'd felt in the mansion driveway, but gentler now. Less desperate. Matteo? I said, as he started to turn away. I'm glad you didn't stay away. His smile was real, reaching his eyes for the first time since he'd sat down at my table. So am I. I watched him walk back into the North End. A figure in a charcoal coat disappearing into falling snow, and the neighborhood that had shaped him. Then I turned toward Cambridge, pulling out my phone. Sarah answered immediately. Em? What's up? I'm having dinner with someone. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. I don't know yet. Someone interesting? I thought about Matteo's transformation, about the risks we were both taking, about the possibility that hope could exist without guarantees. Very interesting, and complicated. I'll tell you about it over coffee. I'm holding you to that. We said goodbye, and I continued walking through snow-covered streets, the card in my pocket and a future unwritten stretching ahead. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges neither of us could predict, moments where our worlds collided in ways we couldn't control. But for the first time since leaving his mansion, I felt like I could breathe fully, not because anything was certain, but because we'd both chosen to try anyway.